Hi, friends. It's Verdeluz Celestial, and I am here tonight, 2 days before the US presidential elections, just wanting to share with you a bit about the astrology charts of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, in addition to a bit about Bernie Sanders. Um, we're just a couple days away, and it's just gets crazier and wilder every day. And I thought as we prepare for this kind of historical election that we could get a little bit of insight into these crazy characters and what makes them tick. We did that recently with some of the human design charts of the two candidates, and that was very insightful. Now you'll see some other layers showing up through the astrology charts. So we're both going to look at some of the key aspects that are permanently in the charts, key configurations, planetary positions, but also some of the key transits or cycles that each of the candidates is going through. And this will help to discover and to kind of explore, what we've been learning about each of them through things like WikiLeaks and all of the accusations of Trump and everything else. And just to give a little insight into this whole campaign and maybe bring some revelation to a pretty wild ride. I was in Europe all the summer, so fortunately I missed some of the craziness, but it's been full on since I've been back in the last month, and just wanted to give you a little bit of insight here. So first thing you're going to see here is actually Hillary Clinton's birth chart. And when you look at this chart, we get a ton of insight right away. Now, this is one thing to understand about Hillary Clinton's chart, is that we actually have three different possible charts. So one of the ironic things about having these three possible charts is that even if we have different birth times, we do have a consistent theme in Hillary's chart, which is the theme of secrecy and hiding, possible lies and manipulation. And all of those shadows we express in the archetype of Scorpio and also in the planet Pluto. Essentially, Scorpio and the planet Pluto are involved in every one of the personal planets, the planets we identify with in Hillary's chart, as well as the professional planet of Saturn. So it shouldn't surprise us, no matter what birth time we get, to see some of the stories that have been emerging about the WikiLeaks and all of the thousands of emails that have been discovered hidden away, in addition to everything else we know about the Clinton family as very powerful, very influential, and that there's a lot of layers going on, including with the people that they hire to work for them. So just wanted you to know that there is a number of different charts. There's a birth time associated with Hillary Clinton that she gives. There's a birth time from another person, and then there's a time that is commonly used. Most people are commonly used this 8:02 a.m. birth time. So here's a page from Astro Databank, and this has the three different birth times: 8:02 a.m., 2:18 a.m., and 20 o'clock or 8 o'clock p.m. And the one that most astrologers have used that I'm going to talk about here is the 8:02 a.m., which you see at the top here. Now, it's actually not as important to all the themes I'm going to describe in the next few minutes. But one of the things that we want to focus on is what we call a stellium, which means three or more planets in a sign that you see over here in Scorpio. Now, if this is the accurate time of 8:02 a.m., this would put all of these Scorpio planets into the 12th house of Hillary Clinton. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is what it means to have all of this Scorpio. And then we're going to talk about this really powerful energy of Saturn, Pluto, and Mars up here in Leo. Then I'll mention a couple things about the house position and what that might mean, and talk for a minute about her moon position and how that's being impacted right now. One of the most powerful things that we know about the Scorpio archetype is that it is an incredibly influential sign, and it often seeks power to influence others. Sometimes that power shows up as a desire for extreme wealth in one's life. This is her sun sign. This is her vitality, her life force, even in some way her life purpose. Now, that power shows up also by playing into the world of politics and all that that brings into one's life. One of the most interesting combinations of planets here is Venus, Mercury, and Chiron in Scorpio. Now, Venus is the goddess of love and relationships, affection, intimacy, creativity, and money. Now, Venus in Scorpio, that version of the goddess, tends to involve herself or marry herself to very influential or powerful people. There's something she can also gain in that process. Obviously, we see this with her ability to possibly become president and her association with Bill and all that that's led to over the last 40 years. Now, Venus conjunct Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer in astrology, a part of our chart that has a wound, but also a possible path of healing. Now, we know that, of course, everything of the history with Bill Clinton, that's been very publicized, and that was a primary wound that came up during Bill Clinton's presidency. Now, there's all kinds of rumors on the internet and YouTube about the Clintons and some of their sordid undercurrent of sexuality. We have some allegations or accusations of pedophilia associated with the Clintons. If you get on YouTube, you'll see quite a few stories about this. Whether you believe it or not, it is interesting considering some of these alignments, because Venus in Scorpio is often a sign that the love nature and how it expresses itself is quite hidden, secret, and it may not want you to know all of the ways that it experiences its love or its sexuality. It is a highly sexual position for Venus. Scorpio is a very sexual sign, and that sexuality can be used in a positive way or a negative way. I mean, it can be used to transform and to take lovers to a higher level of consciousness. But on the shadow side, it can also be used in a kind of dark way, in a controlling way, in a manipulative way, and in a very shadowy way. Now, the fascinating thing is that we don't just have Venus in Scorpio, or Chiron in Scorpio, or Mercury in Scorpio. We have all of them in a square formation. Here you see the red lines, and they're squaring, all of them, Venus, Chiron, and Mercury, squaring Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. Now, this is very, very intense, these aspects. And we can break each one of them down, but that would take hours. So I'm going to summarize some key points for you here, because this is really up in the collective consciousness around Hillary Clinton and the possible very shadowy energies to do with how she achieves the power and influence she does, how her husband did, and sexuality, political power, all of this. Because Chiron squares Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. Now, Venus squares Saturn, Pluto, and Mars, and Mercury squares Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. The square is an angle of tension, conflict, confrontation between these parts within us. Now, her Scorpio energy, that desire for power and influence and control, is also at this square to some of those Leo parts of her that can be a lot more light and playful and creative. But the way that she's integrating that is an incredible thirst for power. And this is the Leo energy in one of its expressions. When we have Mars in Leo by itself, the desire nature, Mars rules the will or the desire, the passions inside of us, the motivations. Mars is driven to be in control in some way or to be a leader in some way. We use the word control especially because Mars is conjunct Pluto and Saturn. Pluto is the planet that is actually the ruler of Scorpio in modern astrology. So now we have a huge double, triple, quadruple Pluto theme in Hillary's chart. So Mars conjunct Pluto is a thirst for power, and we don't even know necessarily what drives us because Pluto is the ruler of the unconscious. This chart has a lot of psychological layers going on, and whatever we think we know about Hillary Clinton, we don't know. Because there is a lot of shadow material going on. It almost could not be more intense. Pluto involved with Venus, Mercury, Chiron, the Sun, not the Sun, but Saturn and Mars. And then the Sun is in Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign. Now, Pluto rules those deeper, darker aspects of our psyche, like we said, the unconscious, and those shadow spaces. So when Mars is conjunct Pluto, there is, in a way, we have to access that darkness in some way. And that's where we could think that some of these crazy claims or kind of really intense allegations of some pretty dark stuff. I mean, you can see the word Satanism associated with Hillary Clinton and all of these things. If you look on YouTube, there's possibilities of some pretty dark energy going on there. And there is, and this isn't sort of my own judgments. I'm reading the symbols and just say that we have a lot of intensity, a lot of layers here, and whatever we think we know, we won't. Mars conjunct Saturn and Pluto now adds the layer of being recognized in the public and having this huge ambition towards that power and towards that influence. And it really is a thirst for an intense amount of control and playing at such a high scale. Mars conjunct Pluto is exact 14 degrees of Leo. This can be incredibly violent, incredibly aggressive energy, at times passive aggressive, and very, very manipulative energy. Now, I've been talking about the shadows quite a bit because this chart has a lot of shadows going on. The Pluto, the ruler of the shadow realm, and Scorpio, also the ruler of the dark, the unconscious. Now, can there be positive elements? Yes, these energies can be used in a positive way, in a constructive way. We would think that the higher expression of all this would be like a shaman figure or an alchemist who's helping to, inspire people with deep transformational healing or therapy, something along those lines. But I don't really think that that's what's happening with this individual. So there is a lot of layers going on, and quite a bit of intensity here. Now, one thing I want to mention is if we do have this exact birth time, this also puts all of these Scorpio planets, Sun, Chiron, Venus, and Mercury, into her 12th house. The 12th house being an area that is also very, very hidden and very, very secretive in astrology. All of the houses relate to different areas of life experience. And, we have the area of career up here at the 10th house, and the area of family and home here at the 4th house, and so on and so forth. But the 12th house is a bit more mystical, and it relates to kind of seclusion and retreat. It can relate to institutions, and it could make sense with this birth time to have a president with this much 12th house, because in a way the president's ego, which we represent a lot with the sun, can be diffused or dissolved into the experience of that role to play. Even though it looks like they have a lot of power, they may not actually have a lot of power. If someone is bought by Wall Street and all the powerful players, like Hillary Clinton is, by the establishment, that pay-to-play idea, really they're controlled, not the controller. And I think that theme is very, very strong here. When you get to that scale, when you're playing with this much Pluto and Scorpio, you're so enmeshed and you're so entangled in that world that you can't get out. And who's controlling who? It's kind of like the mafia. Who controls who is, you'll never really be at the top. And so it can make sense to see that there's these secretive layers. It's really emphasized with the 12th house and the Scorpio energy. Lastly, there is this this is the transits on the outside here and the progressions. This is it's forecasting techniques in astrology. And Chiron here is very interesting this is Bernie Sanders. I apologize for that. This is Hillary Clinton's chart here. So here's Chiron, and here is Chiron conjunct her moon right now. Now Chiron is, as we mentioned, the wounded healer. A wound and a possible healing or coaching or mentoring potential with Chiron. Chiron conjunct the moon can bring huge amount of wounds to that inner child part of ourselves, to that soft, tender, emotional place within us. And also with the moon in Pisces, we're so sensitive. Someone with the moon in Pisces now, you could look at this person of Hillary Clinton and say, well, she doesn't look sensitive. She looks really hard and intense. But you might be seeing one aspect of her, and inside with that moon in Pisces, she first has an ability to camouflage. Pisces can really wear a lot of different costumes. We can think of the actress as one of the Pisces archetypes. The mermaid, kind of mystical, imaginative, creative energy can be there, but also the ability to shapeshift, and it's a mutable sign that changes a lot, and it's very permeable. And with the Chiron transit, Chiron can bring this wounding to the public image, the inner self and the emotional body. And so this could be one of the experiences that's happening for her during this time, in addition to just bringing ill health, which we've seen recently on the campaign trail, and probably in the next few months that the level of stress will be so intense with this possible wind that Chiron on the moon can be quite damaging to the body, and definitely to the emotional body. It's interesting that the moon is ruling an intercepted house, the 8th house in her chart, in this possible birth time. And I won't talk too much about that, but this could also lead to all these secrets and layers coming out to the world. And we won't go deeper than that right now, but one thing I want to say that seems to point to her, quote, winning the election is that the North Node is on her midheaven, which is the angle of career in astrology. This is happening now and over the next few months. The North Node represents the collective path of evolution, or how destiny is unfolding. When it crosses such a powerful point as one's angle of career, absolutely that will be one of the most powerful times in a 19-year cycle where we will be in the public image or in the public consciousness. And so the fact that the North Node, this kind of collective evolution, whether you think of it as evolutionary or not, it's kind of how our consciousness is evolving together towards something, how destiny is unfolding. It's landing right on her angle of career, and also her progressed Mars, which represents the evolution of her desire nature, her seeking for some aspects of leadership, and which is right on her career point. And it seems to suggest that she will take the reins here. Now, when we look at the chart of Donald Trump, which I recently did in another blog post, I'm just going to mention a few other themes, because that blog actually talked quite a bit about some of the key aspects of Trump. But one of the things to understand, it's funny because I'm currently in Chicago, got to be here for the Cubs World Series win, which was quite powerful. And that day walked by the Trump Tower, and Trump's name is emblazoned on the tower. And the story was that Trump actually commissioned or asked for this extra spire on the top of the building, just so that it would be like the second biggest building in Chicago, something along those lines. And this kind of like projection of the phallus and this masculine archetype of like macho kind of energy is very strong in Trump's chart. And I'm sure that's not surprising to people. And just emblazoning the name. And there was quite a few complaints from a lot of people in Chicago about this, because only a few corporations have their names on the buildings like that, and it's pretty big and kind of bold and a bit outrageous. And all of those descriptions describe the Leo rising and Mars on the ascendant of Leo, on the rising of Leo. The Leo energy is what's emanating out to the world, how people will see this person. That's the rising sign. And Leo is absolutely this, can be this larger than life energy that is very self-focused and feels that they are the center of the world, especially when the Leo energy of the ascendant, and we do have an exact birth time for Donald Trump. It's literally the last minutes of Leo, 29 degrees and 55 minutes. So it's like he's the ultimate inflated blimp version of the Leo archetype. And then you add the layer of Mars there, and it gets even more over the top, more passionate, more defensive, more arrogant, as Leo can be, and so can Sagittarius, his moon sign. And that moon and Mars and ascendant, here's the moon, and here's Mars and ascendant, are trying each other. So for him, it just flows for him to be sort of infused with this fiery passion, enthusiasm, and also this sense of being very self-righteous. That confidence that is so strong that it gets him into so much trouble with some of the videos and footage that we saw and have heard about. And for him, that's just his natural way of being. It's instinctual for him to be defensive and aggressive with Mars on his rising. This is very warrior-like here, but it's like the general, Mars on the rising sign of Leo. It's also someone who probably has a huge kind of sexual appetite, and especially for this kind of diversity of energy with his Gemini sun and moon in Sagittarius, and North Node in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius. So there is, we can see that there's a huge kind of passion and desire, and probably someone who can't really see himself very well, because there's so full. The energy here is so full of it itself that it doesn't reflect on itself very much. And one of the most powerful things we can see is that here's the moon on his South Node in Sagittarius. A moon in Sagittarius could be someone who's wise and brings great philosophies to the world and is a great teacher, especially with the Gemini opposition here. But in the case of Donald Trump, there is this Gemini Sag is this larger than life, extravagant, exaggerated energy. This is why he uses words like big league and tremendous so much, because this is that huge energy of Leo and this huge energy of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is bold and this kind of over the top energy that can be very extreme at times. The extremes, though, are like showing up as a kind of dogmatism in one's belief system or philosophy, and a kind of fundamentalism. Now, it doesn't have to be religious. It could be zealous in a different way of some of the phrasings that he's used about certain groups of people. And that high level of opinionation or opinions is something that he has strong with his Gemini energy and his Sagittarius energy. Gemini specifically can be the great gossip, and someone that can put their foot in their mouth over and over and over again, doesn't know when to stop, and that goes almost to a volatile level with the planet Uranus involved here. Uranus is the wild firecracker. We don't know what's coming next. Expect the unexpected. This is why he's so good for the media. Not only does he have that Leo entertaining quality going on here, but this Moon Uranus opposition and this Sun Uranus conjunction says it's crazy. There's craziness here. We don't know what's coming next, and that kind of wild, almost freakish energy at times. In a way, it's what he's come to be. I mean, the Sun and Uranus are on his North Node in Gemini, and he is there in this way. There's probably not too many people like him. That uniqueness of the Uranus energy. And yes, he could be speaking actually at times some points, some information that can really trigger people and ignite them, because with this sort of preacherly energy of Sagittarius and some pieces of information, some stories, some facts at times and some not, some lies. Gemini is such a great storyteller that you might not even know what's a lie and what's truth because of the way it's presented and because of the passion and zeal behind it with Sagittarius and Mars and Leo over here. So there is there's a lot here. There's it's just an over the top chart, and it's something that could be quite volatile as a president to have. Now, if we look over at Donald's transits, one of the things that's really challenging for him right now is that Saturn is on his south node and his moon. And over the next year, that will be an exact transit. And Saturn to the south node usually suggests that there's some kind of karmic retribution happening, that we're paying some kind of debt onto energies over the course of our life, especially having to do with authoritarian figures or our public image, with our relationship to the government itself. That and I think this is partially of where all these stories have come out of, kind of, oh, here's the truth, here's the actual and the factual of what happened with these some of these people who are making accusations. So there's some kind of karmic completion happening and a need to be responsible and be in integrity, and that's going to get weighed out, and that pressure is going to come and it's going to get weighed out into one's life with this kind of transit. And so that's very, very significant. Now, this other energy that we're seeing here is he does have his Jupiter return this next month, which is actually very, very beneficial for someone seeking office. That happens every 12 years. And Jupiter conjoins his Chiron and his Juno at the same time. This is significant. Now, does it mean that he becomes president? No, but I mean, there has been arguments that this whole campaign was actually just about his new TV show. And, it wouldn't surprise a lot of us that there's so much, like, how big can I get my energy to then boost whatever comes next, which is very Jupiter. Jupiter's over the top with how large and expansive can I get. And again, there's no holding back sometimes with the Jupiter transit. We get so overconfident, so kind of indulgent, that it's very difficult for us to reel ourselves in with that transit. There is something else interesting in terms of his progressions, these cycles we talk about. Progressed Sun is on his ascendant. And really, this has really been the last 2 years, year and a half, let's say, where there's this huge public persona and image. So his evolution of his life force and purpose has crossed his angle of presentation to the world, emanating our energy, being seen by the world, that ascendant, that image, that outer self, that outer personality. This is all kinds of fame, and I mean, who's more famous in the last year, except maybe Clinton, the two of them together. And so that doesn't necessarily suggest a presidency, but it does suggest this whole fame and recognition and all of that. So there is there's so much to talk that we could continue to talk about. Venus conjunct Saturn, in Cancer. I mean, that could be such a soft energy when it comes to love, in the Cancer archetype, and the connection with family being important there, and some traditional values. And at the same time, that Gemini energy in him, and that Leo kind of, it's all about me, baby, is that Gemini curiosity seems to have gotten into a lot of trouble, and the high levels of opinion with that. So it's just a wild chart here. And I did want to say one other thing here about Hillary Clinton's chart that I just forgot to mention, which is, maybe you've heard some of these stories about the rigged elections and these things. And, I mean, this much power and influence and connectedness with people in power, there's a lot of theories that it's just that because of the establishment that Hillary is associated with, that there's no way that she could not become president. And part of that may be rigging elections. And that is absolutely a valid thing if we look at all of these symbols in the chart. Whether you agree with that as actually possibly happening or not, it's definitely a strong possibility with this kind of energy. Last 2 minutes, I just want to communicate a little bit about Bernie Sanders. And isn't that interesting about Bernie, right? He only got a few minutes in the campaign, really, a lot more than many expected. But, you know, maybe a lot of us are wishing he was there right now and on Tuesday. But one of the things that was fascinating in Bernie's chart is that he's a double Aries with his moon and Mars. And we don't have a birth time. But what we do have is someone who we know was super passionate, super fired up, could probably be an excellent leader with his sun or with his moon and Mars in the sign of Aries, which in its highest expression is a really inspired leader. And this is why he could argue so well and bring up points that were really important. And he looked like he had that argumentative tone a lot, and like he was kind of pissed off about something. And that's that aggressive, confrontational energy of Aries. And he got that lit up by Uranus a lot in the last year and a half because Uranus is on his moon and on his Mars, giving him all kinds of breakthrough experiences into that rebellious, revolutionary energy that he represented here. And that he had a lot of spirit, especially the spirit of the youth behind him, which is symbolized by the planet Uranus. You also could see that Bernie has a lot of Virgo up here in his, well, we don't know if it's his area of career, but we know that he is a Virgo sun sign, and the sun is on his north node. He is meant to lead. He is meant to be received by the public and be recognized, but not in a kind of grandiose, kind of Trump Leo type of way, but in a way of service, Virgo. And this is why we would say, wow, this could be someone who could be a really great leader, because even though they need to be in charge or have a say in some way, it's in a Virgo type of way, which is what's healthiest for us. This is part of why his concern with education was one of his campaign goals, and something that he really stood for, because Virgo is concerned about improving life, being more efficient with time and energy and resources. And so we also see Mercury in Libra and Venus in Libra. This is what gave him an ability to really listen to people, to be pretty diplomatic in his energies, and to really feel into what is fair, equal, and balanced for all. That's why he railed against a lot of the establishment ideas with Clinton and this kind of thing about what can we all do for each other, and what is fairness really. And speaking that language is one of his gifts. And he has that spirit of Mars opposite his Venus and Moon opposite his Venus to really ignite the potential of rallying people behind the themes around fairness and equality. Jupiter crossed his Sun and North Node and Mercury all this year. So that gave him a lot of expansion, a lot of inspiration and growth this year. And it's a really interesting chart. A lot more we can talk about with Bernie Sanders. Maybe we'll see him again in the coming years. But I hope you've been enlightened, inspired, excited by some of these insights here with this astrological analysis of our crazy, wild 2016 presidential race. It'll be interesting over the next few years, whatever goes down. And I hope you feel inspired to just tune into yourself and also tune into your chart and see what energies can I express in my life at the highest potential, and it really help my fellow beings here on planet Earth. Wishing you all the best. Find me at findyourpowerplaces.com and divinetimingcoaching.com.